remember there was a video game store when I was a kid. And it was right near the train station where, like, all the school kids would go in the morning and go off to their different schools. And so it's a good, like, prime bit of real estate for a video game store, you would have thought. But they always had, like, A, it was always packed. But B, it was the barest selection of video games cartridges you've ever seen. It was Big Nez's video game emporium. And I, for the longest time, have wondered what was really going on at Big Nez's video game emporium, because it was always filled with like Jimbo Joneses, that kind of teenager, like
local hoodlums.
Local hoodlums, the toughs. I was kind of friends with a few of them because Big Nez's little brother played in the same footy club that I did as well. So
now, was Neza like a last name? Like, so was there Big Neza and Little Neza, or was it?
No, I think it's a first name because his little brother wasn't a Nez.
No.
So I think it was his first name. And he actually sort of had that kind of, he was big. He was like, he had that sort of Fat Albert kind of charisma where he was the big, cool guy. Like, he was one of those, he wasn't a kid. He was probably 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
But he was cool enough that his size didn't make him the target of ridicule. Maybe he could fight or something. I don't know. But I just seem to remember it was always generally accepted that Big Nez was Big Nez, and no one ever mentioned his weight or his size. He was just Big Nez. It was part of his thing.
But again, that implies that there's something else going on at Big Nez's, right? Like the idea that all the kids in the neighborhood were like cool with Big Neza feels like that they were in Big Neza's employ, or Big Neza was letting them like log onto the internet in a way that other people wouldn't let them log onto the internet, or something was going on. Like he was burning them cheap copies of games. Like there's some sort of scam going on at Big Neza's that all these kids are in there for. I mean, I'm not saying Big Neza's behind it. I'm just saying with the name Big Neza, it sounds like either he was the dude behind it, or Big Neza is the person that somebody else is setting up as the dupe, the fall guy.
That's right.
There's power behind the thrones, and they've put Big Neza out the front. Everybody loves Big Neza. He's a readily identifiable person, and behind the scenes, someone's running some dodgy escapade out of the Emporium.
Well, it was Big Nez for a start. Just like I'll just correct you right there. Big Nez, not Big Neza.
Oh, not Big Neza. Okay,
no, you're Australianizing it. It's Big Nez. But I do seem to remember, like, he wasn't like a scary dude. Like, there was no obvious ties to kind of like, crime or anything like that. I don't remember him even like buying his booze or anything like that. He was just this sort of like cool, lovable kind of big dude who just he seemed to love video games, but had very little stock. Now, the fact that the local toughs hang out there might also just be because local toughs need a place to hang out. It's after school. You don't want to go home because it's like the Beastie Boys say, like living at home is such a drag. Your mum just threw away your best porno mag. So that could be a reason, just a place to hang out after school. But I also think there may have been some either weed going on, or maybe Big Nez would buy some beers and they'd all hang out at the back. Like it was like a clubhouse for ne'er-do-wells. Listen to me, 15 years old, standing there with my arms folded, looking at these ne'er-do-wells.
I mean, I would like to think they're Nez-do-wells in this situation. So he had his little bunch of Nez-do-wells. Again, to me, it has a Lost Boys vibe. You know how the dude who was in the spoilers for the Lost Boys, if you haven't seen the Lost Boys, but the guy who tries to date the mum, the older guy who turns out to be the boss of the Lost Boys, the head vampire. Maybe that's your sort of Big Nez. Big Nez was your sort of friendly front person, and then you had like a local bunch of teen vampires or whatever. But maybe like it was daytime when you saw them, so probably not vampires, but.
That makes sense because they were like the Kiefer Sutherland gang. I mean, they didn't dress. I mean, if they dressed really well, those guys, there's some snappily dressed vampires. Like it was kind of mixed between sort of like Elizabethan pirate or something. That's how you describe it. I never quite understood in the Lost Boys because it was like, it was the 80s. So there's a lot going on, but were those guys just so snappily dressed because that's how people dressed in the 80s? Or was that an extra layer on top of that? Like, were they dressed like, if they were turned in the 1700s or something? Why did they dress
Yeah.
rock stars, like Adam Ants.
Yeah, they definitely had like a Spandau ballet influence
Yeah.
in what was going on. I think a bit of both. I think it was probably a good era for vampires to be able to wear what you traditionally think was their garb, like,
Yeah.
but with a modern twist and still kind of generally fit into society, not stand out completely.
That's a good point.
Mm.
Because there would be a certain era of vampires where, like, even maybe in the 50s,
Yeah.
you could hang on to your wardrobe and go like, oh, there's some stuff back, or hipsterism at least has brought that back. Like, it wouldn't be unusual for you to be at like a hipster pub and see a young dude in a snappy 50s suit with a Stetson or something like that. You'd be like, all right. But for the older generation of vampires, the ones who were turned in the Victorian era, that hasn't quite, like, if he's the same dude, but he's wearing a top hat and tails, you'd be like, oh, what the fuck's going on here?
Who's that clown? What's going
Yeah.
on? Why is that guy dressed like the old picture they used to have on the gents' toilet at the pub? I don't understand.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.